You check your phone. 2:14 a.m. You do the math. 5 hours left. Maybe 4 if you fall asleep right now, which you will not, because your brain has decided this is the perfect time to replay a conversation from 2016. Your eyes are burning, your body is exhausted, and yet something in your head simply will not power down. Here's the strange part. Every other animal on Earth seems to have this figured out, but the real answer is much stranger than you think. You are, biologically speaking, one of the worst sleepers in the animal kingdom. Not the shortest sleeper, the worst. Lions sleep up to 13 hours a day, sprawled out in the open, completely unbothered. Bats hang upside down for nearly 20 hours and drop straight into it. No ritual required. Even giraffes, standing exposed in a field full of predators, manage short, deep bursts of sleep and wake up fine. You, on the other hand, need a dark room, a specific temperature, a quiet house, and somewhere between 15 and 45 minutes of lying perfectly still before your brain even considers letting go. So here's the question worth sitting with. Why would evolution build the smartest species on the planet with what might be the most fragile, high-maintenance sleep system on the planet? Here is the reframe. Sleep was never designed for comfort. It was designed for survival math, and for most of human history, that math was brutal. Anthropologist Carol Worthman spent years studying sleep patterns in traditional small-scale societies, groups whose lifestyles resemble how humans lived for the vast majority of our history, long before mattresses and blackout curtains existed. What she found upended a lot of assumptions modern sleep science had quietly been making. These groups did not sleep in one solid 8-hour block. They slept in fragments. People woke multiple times a night, sometimes for long stretches, without treating it as a problem at all. Someone was almost always half alert, tending a fire, listening to the dark. Sleep for most of human history was rarely a fully private, uninterrupted event. It was communal. It was watched. It was, by modern standards, a mess. Think about what that actually means. Your ancestors were not resting in guaranteed safety every single night. They were resting in low-grade danger over and over for thousands of generations. A predator does not knock politely and wait for morning. A rival group does not schedule its raids around your sleep cycle. So across that long stretch of time, the humans who survived long enough to pass on their genes were not necessarily the ones who slept the deepest. In many cases, they were the ones who slept the lightest, the ones whose brains never fully checked out. There is a name for part of this pattern. Historians studying pre-industrial Europe found written records, court documents, diaries, medical texts, describing something called first sleep and second sleep. People would go to bed shortly after dark, sleep for a few hours, then simply wake up in the middle of the night. And this waking period was not treated as a disaster. It was treated as normal. People used that window to pray, talk quietly with a partner, tend the fire, or just lie there thinking before drifting into a second block of sleep until dawn. Historian Roger Ekirch spent years piecing this together from archival sources, and his conclusion was blunt. Segmented sleep, not one solid block, may have been the standard human pattern for most of recorded history. The one-block 8-hour night you have been chasing your whole life may never have been the norm at all. It may be a relatively recent invention, arriving alongside artificial light and rigid work schedules. That is the twist nobody tells you. What feels like broken sleep today may not be a flaw at all. It may be the design working exactly as intended, just aimed at a threat that no longer exists and measured against a standard that never really existed either. Neuroscientist Matthew Walker has spent decades mapping what sleep actually does inside the human brain, and one detail keeps standing out. Human sleep is unusually complicated. It cycles through light sleep, deep sleep, and REM sleep over and over several times a night, in a layered rhythm most other animals simply do not bother with. Chimpanzees and gorillas, your closest living relatives, spend most of their sleep in simpler, deeper states with far less cycling. Researchers believe humans evolved this elaborate stage-shifting structure specifically because our ancestors needed to remain interruptible. A brain locked deep in slow-wave sleep cannot hear a branch snap outside the shelter. A brain drifting in and out of lighter stages can. Basically, your nervous system built in a built-in snooze and check function, long before phones existed to interrupt you instead. So every time you jolt awake at 3 a.m., for no obvious reason, heart rate slightly up, mind suddenly wide alert, that is not necessarily insomnia malfunctioning. That is a system with roots stretching back hundreds of thousands of years, doing precisely what it was built to do. It just never got the memo that the danger left a long time ago. Here is where it gets stranger, and this is the part that really rewired the science. Sleep researcher Jerome Siegel studied 3 modern hunter-gatherer and pre-industrial communities, the Hadza in Tanzania, the San in Namibia, and the Simane in Bolivia. None of these groups have electricity. None have screens, streetlights, or artificial light of any kind after dark. If the popular theory was right that pure, unpolluted darkness should produce deep, uninterrupted sleep, these groups should be resting soundly through the entire night. They were not. On average, they slept under 6.5 hours. They went to bed several hours after sunset, not immediately when the sun went down. And their nights were still fragmented with regular periods of wakefulness scattered throughout. In other words, even without a single phone within 1,000 miles, humans still slept in a pattern that modern sleep clinics would flag as disrupted. Even their bodies did not seem to suffer for it. Siegel's teams found no signs of the chronic sleep deprivation that shows up in industrialized populations. No widespread insomnia complaints. None of the daytime grogginess doctors associate with a bad night's rest. These communities had simply built a life around fragmented sleep instead of fighting it. So the problem was never really the screens. The screens are just the newest, most convenient excuse. That single finding quietly rewired how scientists think about insomnia. It suggested something a little uncomfortable to hear at 3 a.m. Modern humans are not broken by modern life. Modern humans are ancient sleepers, running very old software, dropped into a world that no longer requires the constant vigilance their brains still perform, faithfully every single night, whether you need it or not. Which brings you to the modern mirror. You lie in bed, phone finally face down, room finally dark, and your brain still quietly runs its old checklist anyway. Is it safe here? Did something move? Should you stay alert just in case? There is no fire to watch and no predator crouched in the grass outside your window, but your nervous system was never formally told the assignment ended. Walker describes this as a mismatch, an ancient brain operating inside a radically modern environment, and it does not stop at sleep. It shows up in your stress response, your appetite, your late-night anxiety spirals, all of it wired for a world that, for the most part, simply does not exist anymore. Consider what your ancestors' nervous system was actually built to solve. Not a work deadline, not an unanswered text. A rustle in the dark that might mean nothing or might mean everything. Your brain still treats those 2 categories of threat with the same machinery because it has no better tool available. It borrows the ancient alarm for the modern problem because that is the only alarm it has ever been issued. So the next time you wake up at 3 a.m. with no clear reason and no obvious threat, you are not failing at rest. You are running code written for savannas, firelight, and shared shelters, executed on hardware currently lying in a climate-controlled bedroom with blackout curtains and a white noise machine. Your body is still keeping watch, dutifully, whether you asked it to or not. It is simply guarding a threat that vanished roughly 10,000 years ago and never sent an update. And maybe that is the real answer worth taking to bed tonight. You were never the worst sleeper on Earth. You were, in a strange and slightly exhausting way, the most prepared one, standing guard for a night that stopped coming a very long time ago.